So a few days before my 27th birthday, I was on a birthright trip in Israel, and I experienced the tiniest taste of a mabul, this flood that we have described in this morning's Torah portion. This absolute deluge of water came down. I was on the piece of the birthright trip that all of these tours always go down into the Negev. You go to one of these little touristy Bedouin tent things that are supposed to seem like they travel around the way a true Bedouin group would, but they've become so established that they're also pretty stable and have like electricity and little actual buildings for, bathrooms and showers and such. We're staying at one of these for the night, and we spent our afternoon doing the camel riding thing around the area, each of us on our camels in my little group. And then come back to the tents in the evening and have the food that they're serving us and the ceremony with the tea and the coffee. And then not long after dinner, it started to rain. If you've ever been in the desert, when it starts to rain, it doesn't just drip. It's not like a nice pleasant mist. It's not even what I experienced as pouring in the Midwest or here on the Mid-Atlantic. It is just as though there is a massive pitcher of water over your head. And it is just coming down constantly. And that was our experience of the evening, was we had to dash through that in the mud from the tent in which they served us our meal to the tent in which we had put all of our backpacks and sleeping bags to spend the night. And those of us who had put our backpacks or sleeping bags near the edge of the tent had wet sleeping bags. And had wet backpacks and wet clothes for the night, did not have even dry clothes to change into from the clothes that were now soaked through from our run from dinner to our bedroom tent. Those of us who'd put ours closer to the center of the tent managed to stay dry, and our hosts were rushing with tarps to try to put around once we were all inside the tent, essentially sealing us in for the night. And it kept raining all night. And the next morning it was clear. We all walked outside heading toward breakfast, and there were ravines and rivers in the ground that had not been there the afternoon before when we got back from our camel ride for dinner. And so when I review this parsha and Noach's experience of this, I can only imagine what it must have been like for him, for that water to be coming down, not for 6 or 8 or 10 hours, but for 40 days and nights continuously. And so it's no surprise to me that the Torah in chapter 7, verse 11, it says, on the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month of that day. It is no surprise to me whatsoever that the Torah seems to record in Noach's mind exactly the day in his life on which it happened. For me, this little experience was a couple of days before my 27th birthday, because my birthday was on the birthright trip. But a couple days before my 27th birthday, and in exactly this second month, 17th day in the 600th year of Noah's life. This is a dark and scary Torah portion. We often think of like Noah and the ark and the animals, and it's so pretty and so cute. And then the images that we often think of for this Torah portion are the ones that will be in next year's triennial. When we have the rainbow, the ones that were the very ends of what came after it today, of the dove coming back with the branch of the olive branch, our images tend to be on the aftermath, on the resolution, after the sort of creation seems to be coming back together. In some ways, this is a third creation story after the two from Parshat Bereshit, from last week's Torah portion. It's almost this one, like God sort of sets aside a small piece and then crumples up the whole thing, the rest of it, and throws it away like a toddler throws away a drawing that they're not happy with. We have Noach sitting in this teva. There are several very unique Torah words in this Torah portion, by the way. The fun, fancy word for a word that is rare or unique in the Torah is a hapax legamenon. There were 2 in what Marianne read this morning. And then teva, the word for the ark, the only other object referred to as a teva is a little basket that baby Moses is placed into in the Nile. So this teva is some kind of, we have an ark or a basket. To me, it's a structure that saves lives when water is threatening them. So for my experience in the desert and the Bedouin tent, it was the tent was our version of a teva. It saved lives, sheltered lives when water is threatening them. And so I wanted to look at one of the hapaxlegomena. I don't know, is that the plural? That was in what Marianne read, which is, if you want to look at it with me in the Etz Chaim is on page 43 at the very top, but it's Genesis chapter 6, verse 16. Sohar ta'aseh lateva. Ba'alama techalena mimala ufetach hateva vetzida tasime vetachtiem shnaim ushloshim ta'aseha. Make a sohar. I'm specifically not reading the translation on that one. In the ark, terminate it within the cubit of the top, put the entrance to the ark at its side, make bottom side. So we have this sohar, is this unique word. If you look at our Etz Chaim commentary, they've taken this unique to the biblical Hebrew word and said, okay, what are other languages in the area? What do they mean when we say sohar, which is how our commentary came to say an opening for daylight based on the wording of roof and based on the wording and what it would mean in the Akkadian, the Ugaritic, and the Arabic, that era of Arabic, saying to terminate with cubit means that this sohar thing must be that there was an opening in the wall underneath the roof, which is where many of the medieval commentators say it's a window. That's what sohar means. It's a window. I promise you, my experience of that night, a window in the tent would not have been a good idea or helpful to us in any way. So it might have meant a window. You might hear in sohar, modern Hebrew word, soharayim, means afternoon, the time of day when we have the most light. So all of the commentaries go toward light with what this is. But one that's always grabbed me since I had this experience was one that comes up in the Talmud, in Sanhedrin, where the sohar, they said, is this mythical object, this kind of pearlescent, special precious stone that God gave to Noah to put into this place in the ark. That it was not an open window, but this magically pearlescent window or stone that always gave light. I think that there's something very important about that notion of something in this time to always give light. So at this point in the portion, Noah is preparing the teva. He is making the ark. He is preparing the object that will save his lives, the lives of his wife and his children and their wives, and all of the animals that will come in 2 by 2. Yes, we can be cute. But he's preparing this ark. And one of the things that God remembers he's going to need in that ark is a light source. That night when I sat through that rain and that storm, there was no light outside. The electricity that we attempted to have went out. There was no light. It was pitch black, except for the lights on our cell phones inside, because those are on batteries and we had them, and we have those today. But God seems to notice that Noah is going to live through a terrifying and dark and dangerous experience, so much so that the Torah itself remembers it in the way that Noah would on the day in his life where he starts to experience this trauma. What does God provide? A light. God says you're going to need a light, something that will get you through this dark and dangerous and terrifying time. I think that there's something, I was in the process of taking training to be mental health first aid responder, and there's something really important in thinking about how to prepare to have light and to do the self-care. You might help someone going through a rough time or start to experience one for yourself. We have Noah here preparing for a hard time. God offers a source of light. And so as we go about our lives, sometimes in better headspaces than others, maybe we figure out what the sohar that we need is. Perhaps it's just a window to let some of what little light might have been there in, or perhaps It is a shining stone that we have ready for us when we need that light to be there. But may we always find the ways to prepare to have light for ourselves when we might indeed face the darker times. We'll say for me, the next morning was bright and was beautiful and was a reminder of how much wonder our world can have and how much nature can do. And there was just something special about the light of morning that next day. And so may we always prepare our lights, find our lights, and at times indeed find the ways to be one another's light. Shabbat Shalom.